Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, our chair is running a few minutes late, so we're going to start the meeting without him. We won't do any of the budgetary things right away. So this time we're going to have some department presentations. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean to do that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So good evening, everyone, and welcome as we kick off our budget season, as we plan the fiscal 23 budget. But before we dive in, as Mr. Walsh just said, we are going to have a little bit of a warm-up act with the overview and introduction, really, of two of our new key members of the leadership team here in the town of Cheshire. We are very fortunate to have two wonderful individuals leading our planning department and our building department. So we have our new town planner, Mike Glidden, which I know the council did get a chance to meet in person 2 nights ago, although virtually before when we had a Zoom meeting. But also our new building official, Tom Lozier. So this is something we had discussed with Chairman Slocum, that having an opportunity for them to come put a face to a name, introduce, and give at least their initial impressions, as they've both been here for a few months, of the way their departments are running or structured, and also some of their goals as they look down the road, and some of the big issues that are coming forward in their departments. So without any further ado, I think we'll start with the planning department. Town planner Mike Glidden will be giving a brief presentation. I think we're not going to put it up on the PowerPoint here. I think you're just going to have it in front of you there on the slide deck that he handed out. So with that, Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. Nice to see everyone. What is it, 2 days now? So just quick, Mike Glidden, the town planner. Glad to be here. You have the presentation before you, which is prepared. I'm going to kind of skip over some of the numbers, budgetary numbers. I don't want to steal Sean's thunder tonight. So just briefly, the planning department, we'll be a staff of 3, as you know, from the other night. We'll have a full-time town planner, assistant town planner, and land use specialist, which is a change from previous structure of the department. Really, that's the goal of that structure is for efficiencies. You can see there's a chart on probably the 4th page of the slide deck that I provided. It shows your current department structure and what's proposed. As for kind of services and programs, I mean, I know a lot of you have served on planning and zoning prior to coming here, or have, recovering land use commissioners. So you know that we are the essential. We're the staff members for the land use commissions, planning and zoning board of appeals, inland wetland agency, aquifer protection, and we also provide staff assistance to the environment committee. Separate of the PowerPoint presentation, I kind of outlined a lot of the services and programs that our department is responsible. Some that are required by federal law, some required by state law, by charter, by ordinance, by policy, or just other services that we provide. I'm just going to hit on a few of the key ones that we are responsible for, not all of the chart. One, in the federal law, the Fair Housing Act, National Flood Insurance Program, two federal laws that we deal with on a kind of regular basis when dealing with land use applications. The state law, 2 of the big ones that I just want to note is one, pursuant to Connecticut General State Statutes 8-23, we have to update the Plan of Conservation and Development, or the comprehensive plan, once every 10 years. The last time the current plan was updated was in 2016. So we're coming up on 2026. We have to complete that work, which that'll start going. You'll start hearing more about that in the incoming years. The other is something we're working on right now, and that is the affordable housing plan, which is required pursuant to Connecticut General State Statutes 8-30J. That's something the commission took on. It needs to be completed by June of this year. They're working on it, and I'll do a shameless plug tonight. There's a public workshop coming up on March 28th, which draft plan will be presented to the public, and kind of the commission is looking for feedback on the plan. So we'll have it eventually posted after the commission gets the chance to see it this coming Monday on the town website. So mark your calendars if you want to come and hear about the exciting world of the 830G and 830J, the general state statutes. Charter ordinance, I think the big one, as we heard the other night, was, we have our land use requirements, but also we are enforcing, Mike Strollo is enforcing, who's going to be, I think we can announce it for Monday, the assistant town planner. He's the blight prevention officer for the town. I will say we've already received some complaints, probably some of the frequent flyers that everyone expected. And he's doing a great job. He's taking that on right now. We've already, started enforcement cases on a few people and reaching out and following through. The last two things is just really hitting on by policy. We update our plan of conservation development, but that's also a policy document that we're trying to achieve those goals. So it's something we kind of standards we set for ourselves, which could be a challenge in itself. Plus, there's a long-term goals. So sometimes after you update one POCD, you say, well, you know what, we're going to change that on the next one because we really can't get that goal, or it's not something that the community wants to see any longer, just because of the change of economy, et cetera, or just current trends. I think just the other thing, area of focus, like I said earlier, for the next fiscal year, and what I'm seeing is just one is continuing the goals and objectives of the plan of conservation development, which is kind of broad and provides its own challenges. The other is just maintaining a high level of customer service and technical assistance on land use applications, or land use matters, I should say, because it's not just applications, but enforcement too, because we'll get the phone calls. I think the department has provided a high level in the past. We like to continue that. And I think right now, at least you have two people that unfortunately our admin will be retiring at the end of the month, but we have a good team, a foundation for an excellent team. We're going to start recruitment, and I really thank the assistance of this board approving Monday night the revised job description for our land use specialists. So that's one challenge that we'll run into, is recruiting the right individual to join this team. And it's kind of exciting, and it will be, present its own challenges and stuff, but I think we can do it. I've seen it occur in the other communities I work for. The last is just, I know everyone's going to say, I kind of hit on a few of the projects we're working on, but I just wanted to outline some major things that are going on. One is, as the council knows, the town voted to opt out of the accessory dwelling units regulation pursuant to Public Act 2119. The commission is looking at those regulations. It's a land use decision, it's a planning and zoning commission decision, but we're going through. Eventually, something will be drafted. It'll go through a public hearing process, so you may or may not hear anything about it. Recreational marijuana. The commission implemented a moratorium for the next calendar year. They excluded micro cultivators. Actually, coming in April, there will be a public hearing. They've developed a micro cultivator regulation. The big key is this with the micro cultivator regulation, not to give too much of a preview, it's going to be allowed in the industrial zoning districts with a lot of standards to prevent nuisance issues related to the use. In talking to my peers, both in Connecticut and also a few peers in California and Massachusetts, we heard what they experienced in other states and incorporated into those regulations. But we still have to tackle the other marijuana terms that were part of this bill, and that we will be tackling that in the upcoming calendar year. I already gave the plug for the affordable housing plan. Like I said, that's coming up. And the last is an environment commission activity is finalizing management plans for the Ricky property on Fenn Road, the open space purchase. We have a draft management plan, just has to be refined. We have a few details the Audubon has asked to include in this. So eventually that will be going before the Environment Committee, which in turn will be presented to the Town Council later this year. So, I mean, those are the major projects. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Mike. So anybody on the council have any questions? Dave?
If I could, please, just a couple of them on different items. The affordable housing regulations, back in the 80s or 90s when that first became an issue, the council had an involvement as a legislative body. Do we have any involvement in that at this time?
So the affordable housing regulations are a zoning matter. They're part of the zoning regulations. They have a regulation right now, Section 44A, of the regulations, which was the affordable housing reg to kind of promote affordable housing along certain corridors in town that are served, that are properties greater than 5 acres, less than 25, that are served by water and sewer. So we've made efforts to it. We've approved, well, one application. There's a pending one that I'm sure people have heard about that's over in East Mitchell, but really it's a land use matter.
Okay.
But the affordable housing plan is kind of similar to the POCD. It's a big picture planning document that, you know, we're trying to see what actions, what changes, anything that we can implement to kind of promote affordable housing. Because under Connecticut General State Statutes, 10% of our housing stock is supposed to be deemed affordable as they define it.
And as defined, there are a lot, we probably have 10% of our housing stock that is affordable. It's just as defined with the deed restrictions is where the issue is. And have municipalities made any headway?
So deed restrictions are one way to create new units. There's another way to create units, and that's actually the assistance that individuals receive. So let's say that you're a first-time home buyer and you get approved for a Connecticut Housing Finance Authority loan. That actually counts towards our affordable housing credits. So that's not creating new housing units. That's attracting people who qualify under those numbers. And actually, in the affordable housing plan, we provide details on what it means to an individual based on the size of the household for affordable incomes based on 80% of the area median income and 60% of the area median income. We show what the actual salaries are, but also what's 30% of their income, which then turns into what's an affordable price for a home or for a rental unit, because also that applies to rental units.
Which is why the numbers are very different for a town like Cheshire than it would be for Hamden, although it's all under affordable housing. It's a different level of income level. But just want to make sure we didn't have an involvement, because we did way back when. And all right, and I'll forego my second question. Thank you.
Okay.
Fine.
Anyone else have anything? Just had a couple comments. First, thank you for hitting the ground running. I mean, you've done a tremendous job in the short time you have been here already. The changes you've made, I think, are going to help improve the planning department. With the blight ordinance taking place, I'm glad to hear that, Mr. Cirillo is already working on that. I know I talked to our town manager about it, but going forward, I would appreciate updates on the blight over at each of our meetings or periodically. So those of us on the council, in case we get requests from constituents, we want to make sure that we are aware of what is being looked into and what isn't. So
we could, if Sean and the council are okay, what we could do is we could provide really brief enforcement updates, similar to what the zoning enforcement officer does to the Planning and Zoning Commission, on a either quarterly or we can talk
Well,
about
that's
that.
what we discussed, at least at each of the town manager reports for each month, similar to how we did with the unsafe premises ordinance when it was first enacted. But we were also monitoring to see how many we have in case, that might be too infrequent. And if we have a series of enforcement actions that are taking place all within a week, we're going to try to work out a regular, we don't want to inundate you with emails, but on the other hand, if we could give you at least an update so you're aware, because a lot of the same ones, you're all getting complaints, you've gotten complaints in the past, and you're all going to get the same ones. So it's in everyone's best interest to keep everyone informed. So,
and besides getting complaints from people in the town, will the assistant town planner be looking into things he might see on his own as well, and look into those, or does he have to wait for somebody to issue?
So he would follow the ordinance. I think the ordinance requires a written complaint. So we'd have to, if it's in the ordinance that we need a written complaint, that's what's going to trigger the enforcement. But saying that, we know a lot, let's say the gruesome 6, the ones that all of us know, we've been out, we're just kind of waiting, going, well, that qualifies for blight. We're ready to go as soon as someone complains. That one qualifies for blight. And also we've reached out to Jeff D'Onofrio, because a few of them overlap with zoning enforcement cases. So saying which one wants to take precedent, the zoning enforcement or the blight. And we're kind of taking the kitchen sink approach on that and saying everything goes.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything? Yep. Mr. Talbot?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Sean, what the light bulb went off when you guys were speaking on that is that stuff, is the enforcement stuff, is that public knowledge that is routine or?
That's correct. It's, yeah, any enforcement matter or enforcement documents, whether it's complaints and or letters that are sent correspondence to a property owner are public documents and public information.
So could we do some sort of SharePoint site, Google Doc, whatever, that we have access to that, just, everybody updates it on a thing and we can go in and look at it when?
Yeah, absolutely. We can discuss some options there. Whatever's kind of the most user friendly, but also regularly updated. That might be even easier. So
I was going to say, as we're
Doc
sitting
version.
here, tonight surrounded by paper and,
Right.
maybe easier just, and if it's updated by the enforcement officer, and so we can go right to the one site and see what's on there, where it stands, and provide an update.
Right.
If a constituent reaches out to us and says, hey, I put in for the XYZ property, where does it stand?
Right. And at the end of the day, it's really, most importantly, is the address. So everyone knows, oh, that's one that we know has been submitted. And then, as you said, some of those yardsticks of where has the complaint been received, actions taking place, something like that. I don't think all of the details necessarily have to be there, but something that certainly they're available if you need them. But I think also just so that oh yeah, such and such, street has been submitted, that address is in the queue and it's being worked on.
And Arnett, that wouldn't have any FOIA implications, would it?
Public information.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Chair.
Well, I see our chair has arrived.
My apologies, Michael.
It's okay.
Mr. Glidden, I should say. You're all suited up tonight. Well, you got to tell me where you are. I thought I was supposed to be here just for everyone's edification. I was sincerely prepared to be here for 6:30, and I'm a little ahead of schedule. And I apologize for that.
Mr. Glidden just gave us an overview of the planning department. I think we've asked, I don't think anybody else has any questions. You have any questions?
No, I had that review this morning. We met earlier today, so thank you, Michael.
So
That's a lie, by the way, but I just.
the next one is Mr. Lozier's introduction, and we can turn over to our town manager for that.
Sorry, you didn't see my hand.
I did not.
I wanted to ask you, where does the letter come from? Can a neighbor or maybe we provide?
It's the one on the side.
Sorry. Where does the letter come from for the enforcement? Does it come from a neighbor? Or, if, we go by houses every day that might be blight. And if you don't get a letter on that particular house, I don't know if I want to get involved, but you know what I'm saying?
It could be.
Where does the letter come from?
It could be anyone. It doesn't have to be just a neighbor, someone lives in the neighborhood. Anyone could file the complaint with the office. And one other thing we will be doing, we looked at similar communities. They also have complaint forms specific to blight. What we may do is make a quick document that kind of make even like a kind of a checklist to say, here's right off the ordinance, here's the conditions that are considered blight. Does this property qualify under any of these conditions, to make it easy for someone to file a complaint to?
I think that would be good. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, I think we're ready to move on from the planning department to brief overview from our new building official, Tom Lozier. Welcome, Tom. And I think that everyone should have a slide deck in front of you here. Tom will spend a few minutes going through and then we'll go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. As Sean said, Tom Lozier, building official. Here to discuss the building inspection department overview. Our mission statement: to safeguard the health, safety, and welfare of the community through communication, education, and enforcement of the state of Connecticut building codes. We are a division of public safety. Just a quick administrative overview. The building inspection department has 4 full-time employees. The building official, 2 assistant building officials, and an administrative assistant. We are responsible for reviewing all permit applications and building plans to construct, add, or alter building structures in town. The department also issues demolition, building, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and sewer permits. The building inspection department collects all associated permit fees and zoning fees. Professional staff performs inspections on all issued permits and responds to complaints reported by the public. Staff also responds to emergency situations such as fires, structures involved, motor vehicle accidents, and storm damage. Our hours of operation are 8:30 to 4, Monday through Friday, and we are located here in City Hall, room 215. Plan reviews are performed on every project. We review for code compliance according to the 2018 State Building Code, and once the plans are approved, we issue the permit. Approvals. I handle all the commercial building permits, the demolition permits, and try to resolve work done without a permit, and I also help with the overflow. Assistant building official Conrad Sear handles all the residential building permits and sewer applications. He also picks up some overflow. Assistant building official Anthony DeQuillo handles plumbing, mechanical, and electrical permits. We approve all aspects of building projects before a certificate of occupancy or a certificate of approval is issued. Emergency inspections. We respond to all. Structure fires, cars versus building accidents, reports of unsafe structures. Inspections are performed on as needed and may occur at any time, day or night. The schedule is set up, the regular schedule is set up by phone. Inspections are assigned based on the type of inspection, location of the inspection, and staff availability. We inspect Monday through Friday, 9:30. We have a window, 9:30 to 11:30, 1:30 to 3:30, unless it's emergency. Each 2-hour window contains 4 to 6 inspections across approximately 153 miles of roadway in our town. Freedom of Information Act request. Manual searches of old paper permits to verify permit information within a specific address are done on a daily basis. Commercial requests require manual archive searches for permits, for permit information, and archived building plans. I don't know if any of you have been in the basement, but we have racks of old permits, and just a little punch. We're trying to digitize all of those permits, so we have them. We have every week we have requests for old permits for projects that are going on. It just saves the designer a lot of time if they're able to get a set of plans, scan them in, and rework them, if you will. And we get a lot of those requests. Requests are received in person, on the phone, and through email. Payments. We collect building, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, sewer, tank, and zoning fees. And as you'll see on the last page, payments posted for July 1st, 2021 through March 3rd, 2022. We received 1,624 payments, and that's through building, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and so forth. And so far to date, we've received $502,427. And our goal is $625,000. We should meet that goal easily. That's all I have. Thank you. If you guys have any questions.
John, and then I'll go to you, Dave.
I don't have so much a question. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
It's great to have you here, Tom. And I think, from what I see, I know it's been busy recently, but I also know that it's going to get busier unless something changes dramatically. And your department, as well as the planning department, are going to be critical to the kind of the smooth operation of the town. There'll be many people complaining if things don't go reasonably well.
Right.
I know of some large developments. I know they'll probably be taxing on your small staff. And I know they'll probably, it'll be hard to fit in small things. And I know Michael, I know how Michael ran his department before. I don't know you from before, but I think I get the sense that you're organized. Service to me is the most important thing. As a community, we need to be welcome to all, and that's developers, builders, as well as our residents, because we all make up the community. So I'm hopeful that that's the kind of the culture of the department, that it's welcoming, it's open, and it's responsive. I've been involved before where in other communities where it seems like agencies, a building department, planning department is doing people a favor, and that's not the kind of the service that I'd like to see in the community. So I just want to put, as you say, plug, I'm putting a plug in for service being the most important aspect of the business. So.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you. Yeah. And the staff is quite aware of that we're looking for customer service, number one. And we're very welcoming. If you guys want to stop by, please stop by anytime. You got projects or you just want to stop in and say hello, please stop by.
Thank you.
Thank you. And also, I'd like to express my welcome as well. It's nice meeting you.
Likewise.
We're glad to have you in there and look forward to a successful building department. My question just goes to, you talked about the issue of, open permits and helping people with open permits. And I know that that's over the last few years become a much bigger issue as more and more people are looking, especially when houses are now for sale. Up until a few years ago, nobody looked at open building permits when they were selling houses, and now it's becoming a much bigger issue. So I just wonder, is that something you see as a big chunk of your day? Is it something that how much time you think that's taking, and is that something obviously you're looking at obviously easily incorporating into the department?
We are, and we probably see a couple per week, and then everybody's got a closing on Monday, so
right, it's always last minute.
We need to walk them through the permit process, go out do our inspections, and if there's any open issues, we need to have them resolve them first, and then we go back, close out the permit, and then they could have their closing. Unfortunately, sometimes with our schedule and with going through the permit process, it takes a little longer than their deadline. So we try to get on them as soon as possible, but it's really hard to inspect work after it's already covered.
Right.
So what we do is we look to professionals to give us a letter from an electrician, from a plumber, from an HVAC guy saying, we installed it, we're going to stand by it, and then we feel a lot more comfortable after that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate the presentation. And kind of piggybacking off of what my colleagues have just talked about, is there like a permitting standard that you try to make that says, we'll turn around a permit application in X amount of time? And what does it look like right now? If someone came in with an application for a permit, how long would it take them to get that returned?
Okay, great question. The state allows us 30 days for review. So it never takes 30 days unless it's a really large scale project and we're back and forth with the designer and changing plans to meet compliance. But I would say within a week or two on a simple permit, a deck, a boiler, within a week, small electrical, maybe a small shed. But the larger projects, sometimes with the back and forth between designers and other departments also reviewing. So I've changed the permitting system where the application comes in. Once the application is complete, then the fee is due. After that, all the reviews start happening. The way it was before was we weren't collecting fees until all the reviews were complete. So some people would kind of either lose interest in their project or just never bother calling back for a follow-up. But this system's working out pretty well. And as long as Chespercott, the fire department, other people in building are all ready to go on the plans, then we release the plans. Public Works also, a lot of times, we need their approval.
Yeah, and when you were talking about approvals, it was, I liked hearing that yourself as well as Conrad are kind of handling the overflow. So if one area is, getting bogged down, there's assistance, throughout the department to help make sure that these are out in a timely manner, so.
Correct. And also residents or contractors, they'll let us know if we fall behind on our permit and they got a project that's ready to go, they'll call and say, how's it going? And then I'll review it. And if there's another department or even within my department, if somebody's, missed it, fell through the cracks, we get right on it and we push it through.
Yeah, and that goes, I think, to Mr. Malone's point about, customer service, so to speak, and making sure, there is that, communication, and it's a positive experience. We're welcoming the business, and the fact that you're going to hit your budget this year is great. So thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Walsh.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you.
I just kind of piggybacking off of my colleagues as well. There is going to be some large developments going on in the north end. Do you feel that you have enough staffing to do that kind of inspections on a timely manner? Sure. Because some of the issues that I've heard in the past were it's not the inspections, it's the comebacks where you have to go back and there's delays in it and it pushes the projects further back. I just get concerned, with the big development up there and then the rest of the stuff that's going on in the town. Do you feel you have the staffing needed? Because I'm assuming you're going to have an increase in what you expected this year based on what the numbers look like right now. So
We're hoping for bigger numbers. And to answer your question, as far as staffing at this point, I believe we'll be okay. If that becomes an issue, we could hire a part-timer. The nice thing about large commercial projects is they have special inspectors. We require them to hire a special inspector. We have to approve it. And then we receive special inspector reports and we piggyback with them looking at things, building the box, if you will, is mostly done by special inspectors. They look at the concrete, they look at the steel, they look at the decking. That's all stuff that they're going to sign off. Their engineering is going to sign off on a statement of professional inspection. So I'm not too worried about that, although we need to keep an eye on it and keep our guys going out. And, when you're dealing with really good contractors, there's not a lot of comebacks, if you will.
Right.
We get it done right the first time and move the project forward.
Okay. One other thing you were mentioning about the scanning of permits that you're starting to do in the basement.
Yes.
Are basically all the permits that are being done now scanned automatically now, and so you're just going to the ones that from way back?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's all the archived. All the new stuff is all PDFs that get uploaded right to the permit. So there's a permanent file already.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could just
Ms.
echo.
Nichols.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Ms. Nichols.
Go ahead.
We've met before, and
Yes.
I have one experience with the building department about 25 years ago in remodeling. I'm having one now, and I commend you for the service that you are providing. My question is this: there are many, many people doing remodeling jobs, as I am doing, not new builds. So how does that fit in the hierarchy of inspection. If you're doing large housing developments and they're all brand new homes, and a homeowner is doing his own, I'm not, but I have a contractor who's dealing with it, but I'm my own owner and I want to make my own basement fixed. How does your department respond when I call up with questions about what my responsibilities as a homeowner are to get the proper permits and help me through the process? Do you have time for that? That seems like a time-consuming project because contractors know what they have to bring in. They know the plans they have to provide. But how do we make it easy for the homeowner who's doing a small project and wanting to be correct?
Yeah, so what I do is I'll take that phone call and I'll walk you right through from the ground up. I'll
Okay.
walk you through the process. And as far as inspections go, it's first come, first serve.
Okay.
And as our schedule fills up, we take 4 to 6 per slot. And in the morning, 4 to 6 in the afternoon, and then it overflows to the next day. But to answer your question, myself and my staff are very patient with especially residents. And we go through the process with them. We walk them through the online permitting system. There's folks that don't know about that online permitting system. So we walk them right through from,
Good.
Follow the website, go to the building department, click on the link, and then follow, through the permitting system.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And you've done that. You've been very responsive and given
Oh,
me times,
absolutely.
and they've been there at the time they said. So that's good.
Sean, were you about to introduce something before I ask questions, which is fine?
Nope, I was just wanted to piggyback on what Don, just
ahead, Dan.
an answer to something that Don had asked. With respect to, as Tom was just saying, the individual inspections and the additional contractor inspections, at times before, with Tom's predecessor, if there's a complicated, very complicated job, say a subterranean commercial kitchen for a restaurant, that might require special consultant inspectors. And I've always worked with the building official to make sure we approve those and move those along, because you don't want that bogging down. Or if there's a specialty that's frankly such a complicated job that we need that, specialized set of eyes on the project, we've always approved those, especially knowing as volume is up, right, revenue is coming up too. So we know there's dollars there to support.
We don't outsource it. It's the builder that hires these special inspectors, and then they give that stuff to
On
you.
most of those jobs, correct. Yeah. Every once in a while, there might be a job where we just need a special consultant to come in with a very special skill set. It's pretty rare, but again, it's happened before. And again, it's all in the name of moving things along so they don't get bogged down. And then again, most importantly, that public safety is protected. So.
Mr. Lozier.
Yes.
Welcome and thank you for meeting with us tonight. We do as a council think it's important to become more familiar with the departments. Many of us rely on anecdotal infill on how well a department is with customer service and everything else. And yours is a department over the years that I've actually heard negative things about. Okay. And I believe over time, all negatives can become positive and will. And I think some of it goes back to probably when they introduced, contractors having to go in and fill out forms online or something like that, without the benefit of counter time. And maybe that was some of it. But Mr. Milone introduced the fact that customer service is very important. And I can only stress that it's extremely important. And I know it's an area where, everyone needs it on Monday or Friday. Probably on Friday is when the contractors really show up at 5. And I know that those can be stressful moments. And there are probably some of the contractors that aren't maybe as responsible as they could be. But again, complaints that I've heard, and I've heard it from contractors basically. And I've also heard things such as how easy it is to go to Southington, to go to Wallingford, and to get a welcoming thing. Now, I'm just telling you what I hear. And you're not responsible for all the old news and all the different workplace environment. And I don't want to condemn anyone in that department who's been around a while, because I've always felt as though they're very professional people, but I've never been a customer. So I guess I'm sharing with you anecdotal information that's come to me pointedly over many years. So I view this as a department that's critical, very important, obviously legally required, and with high expectations that not only are we following all the rules, but we're doing the best we can as a department to provide the best service, reasonable service. I'm not expecting you to do cartwheels for anybody, but that's just my massage for tonight. I guess based on honestly what I've heard, and I know all of my colleagues were generally more polite, perhaps, or able to stand back. I'm just telling you what I've heard.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, we've turned the department around. It's more welcoming now, and it's, we have Michelle. She's our administrative assistant. She's very bubbly and great on the phone. Great. I've gotten multiple, praise for what she's done for the department from residents. So it's very welcoming now, and there's no attitude there. And moving forward, we want people to do business here in
Terrific.
Cheshire, not go to Southington or Hampton or anywhere else.
Absolutely, and I think that's terrific. Now the other thing, going back to wanting to get the old documents online and available for people that really need them, want to see them. Is that an effort that's just brand new? Is it, and how is it funded? Are you able to take advantage of some of the monies that come from the state? I know I had spoken to the town clerk about the potential for the town clerk's funds that come back from the state to assist in that effort. Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of any grants, although we are putting in $10,000. I understand it's been put in over the last 4 or 5 budget cycles and to no avail, but it's something that we really need.
Well, I think it was actually more or less, when I talked to the town clerk, it had as much to do with what they get for that purpose. I mean, they're not budgeting for it. They're actually funded for some of this, is my understanding. Did I have that right or wrong? And she had suggested to me that I think she'd had a conversation with Conrad. It may have been Conrad that those monies could be used in the building department.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Well, I
yeah,
thought maybe
mean,
you should hear that, and you can find out something else than I understood from her.
Great. Yeah, I'll follow up with her.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate your coming tonight. I sincerely do.
Thank you.
We all set for the big moves?
I'm going to move over there. It's on the screen. Try not to. All right. I figured rather than drop down the screen, I'll just put my PowerPoint up here, but you all also have it in front of you, printed out. Hopefully this comes up. Oh, good. It's not bars. All right. Nope. Why is it doing that? Is it trying? Oh, good. It's okay. It looks differently on my screen for some reason. Can I change it? Oh, good. All right. That's good. That's all that matters. All right, so I know the moment everyone's been waiting for. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the official kickoff of the 2023 operating budget season. So I'm going to walk you through, actually I have a little, there we go, overview right here. So tonight we're going to be discussing the 2023 operating budget. As you'll recall, those of you that have been on the council in prior years know that the last 2 years I've taken effort to present a capital budget at the same time. Of course, both times we were first delayed by COVID, really 2 times over. But we did present a capital budget at the same time. This year, due to the understandable interest and need to incorporate the 2 elementary school projects as part of the next generation plan, I won't be presenting a capital budget tonight. As a reminder, by charter, and I can actually put that back over here, the operating budget has to be presented by March 10th, but the last couple of years, again, I've moved that up. The capital budget, which has to be presented by July 15th, we've moved up and presented at the same time. So you'll recall your budget books were almost twice as thick last year. The plan is once those final numbers are complete for the elementary schools, we will be submitting a capital budget plan really in the coming weeks and maybe month or so from now. Obviously, as the council is well aware, there are key grant deadlines and submittal in June. So we won't be waiting until July, but you will be getting your capital budget documents again once that's ready in the next 4 to 6 weeks or so. So tonight we'll just be talking about the operating budget. And again, sorry, is it advancing here? All right. All right, I will just move right ahead. So tonight I'll be starting with some budget context on what's going on around the town, what's going on around the country that informs this the budget that you have before you tonight. I'll then get into revenues and fund balance analysis, and also then expenditures and major budget drivers. Probably spend the most time on that. Then discuss the impact and the projected mill rate, also the grand list and taxpayer impact, followed by a brief couple of slides on debt service and where we've come from and where we're going. Also the community pool and WPCD special revenue funds. And finally, I'll review the budget schedule. So the fiscal 23 proposed general fund operating budget that I'm presenting tonight totals $125,693,140. You'll see on the chart in front of you, general government is an increase over the current year budget of $1.3 million. The education budget, and again, this is reflective of the increase for fiscal 22 approved a couple of nights ago with $1.5 million from ARPA, is an increase therefore of $2.6 million or 3.3%. Debt service, again, looks like it's decreasing. It's decreasing over the appropriation last year. You'll recall we added $1 million to that appropriation. So it's really about $6.8 million worth of debt service and $1 million appropriation into the debt service reserve fund last year, which we are using to smooth future years of debt service. Capital non-recurring is proposed to stay the same at $1 million, and the contingency line item at $125,000 that from time to time we use at the end of the year as we're doing budget transfers is recommended to stay flat at $125,000. Overall, the total budget increase over the current year budget as it stands now is 2.93% or little over $3.5 million. So as I said at the outset, I'll start with some comments on the budget context. I think first and foremost, it bears mentioning as we've come through the COVID-19 pandemic, this council was presented actually on March 10th of 2020 is when I delivered budget books 2 years ago. And that was our last in-person meeting for a number of months as we struggled through that budget virtually and then eventually in person. That budget year, fiscal 21, we were planning. We were able to budget for no mill rate or tax increase. We did rely on $2 million of fund equity that year, which was supported by the fiscal 20 budget surplus we had through the operations that spring. Also cuts to pandemic impacted services and the freezing of positions. As we plan the fiscal 22 budget, the budget we're in right now, we were able to get down to a 0.5 mil increase, which is a 1.51% tax increase. Just as a reminder, we used $1.4 million of ARPA funds as general fund revenue, as lost revenue, and also just a few nights ago appropriated officially the $1.5 million that we planned of ARPA funds to be infused into the Board of Ed Medical Trust Fund. A Board of Education request for fiscal 23 ultimately is $4.1 million over their adopted fiscal 22 budget, as adopted in May of last year. So again, that's exclusive of that 1.5 million that we were just discussing 2 nights ago. Obviously, I'll let Jeff and Vin do their presentation next month, but as the council's well aware, their large drivers include continued insurance claim experience and medical trust fund challenges, but also growing enrollment. Currently, their enrollment as of today is 4,113 students. And as Jeff pointed out in his letter, which you'll find in your budget book, that's a number that was not projected. We were not projected to hit in terms of students until the 25-26 school year. Additional budget context, local unemployment data. Cheshire really through the pandemic has fared pretty well in the employment realm. As of the most recent data, which is the December 21 data, Cheshire's unemployment rate stands at 3%. It's the 27th lowest out of 169 towns in Connecticut. That compares with a statewide average of 4.4%. Obviously, in the news just today, the inflationary economic environment is certainly going to be presenting challenges as we look forward in this budget. A lot of these department requests came to me a little over a month ago. We've refined and modified some of them, but as we'll get to a slide later, just in gasoline and diesel, the general fund, the general government side of the budget is up about $82,000 in our budget, and we were able to lock in lower rates for at least half of the upcoming year. But that's a big variable right now. I mean, we're all seeing the pain at the pump. This morning they announced that the CPI for February was 7.9% over last February, which is the highest since January of 1982, 40 years ago. So we're clearly in some very unsettled times, and that drives up prices for everything, including the things that the town procures. We are heavily staff dependent, of course, so it's a very staff resource dependent budget, but we buy a lot of supplies. We have vehicles that we drive. We have all of the normal things that every household has as well. So that's clearly going to be something that we have to monitor very closely as we develop this budget and continue forward. And again, as I said, fuel prices have been spiking. Just a reminder, we don't have any unsettled union contracts right now through June 24. So just put that note in there. It does allow us a little more certainty with respect to payroll projections in the budget. The state and the governor's proposed budget. So far, the fiscal 23 second year of the biennium budget is nearly flat. We got our town runs the other day, the town run budget numbers that we received from the state. An increase of $32,809 on a total of about $0.8 million of state aid. So again, largely flat. That does incorporate, you'll recall last year, the tiered pilot program, which we enjoyed the increase last year. And it fortunately is not a one-time increase that goes on in perpetuity. So we are happy to see that is staying in place. One important note, though, the proposed budget you have before you does not include an assumption that the motor vehicle mill rate cap of 29 mils will go into effect as it currently stands. And I'll explain why. The governor has said that he's going to hold towns harmless and that we'll be made whole for any revenues that we lose because the mill rate for cars gets dropped to 29 mils. The issue is, as they presented the state aid numbers that would offset that for towns like Cheshire that are above 29 mils, they used, intentionally or not, it's hard to tell, the October 1, 2020 values. Now, that may be because that's the most recent they had when they first came up with the proposal, but all towns have since had to turn in their October 21 values, which of course we know, as we've already talked about, that's where a lot of grand list growth has happened. And so in order to actually give yes, we can give our taxpayers some tax relief with respect to motor vehicle taxes, which sounds great. But the towns certainly want to be held harmless, as the governor is saying they're going to do. So the issue is when you're using October 2020 numbers instead of 21, that presents a shortfall of about $297,000. We're reasonably confident. I mean, all towns are in the same, most towns are in the same position. Clearly, there are some towns that are below 29 mils already, and they're not slated to get any reimbursement because there's nowhere to lower their car tax to. But we're cautiously optimistic that with the surpluses experienced by the state and the available cash, that they would be able to actually make towns whole, as is clearly the objective. So I do want to note that should that not come to pass, that's a $297,000 hole we'd need to grapple with. But again, more will come on that when we talk about revenues. A reminder on federal and state COVID relief funds. Just on ARPA alone, again, we've spent most of our time on that recently. Just over $8.5 million, approximately $5.2 million has been appropriated so far through council discussions through the adoption of the fiscal 22 budget and Bartlett South, but still some available funding there to discuss further in the budget process. Grand list growth, again, as I just referenced, our grand list is up 3.03%. This is the highest grand list growth in a non-revaluation year in really 30 or 40 years. This follows 1.52% and 1.2% increases the past 2 years. Again, as I said, motor vehicles experienced the largest increase of $64 million, or 24.1% increase. And that grand list growth of $87 million would generate a little over $3 million at the proposed mill rate, as we'll get into later. All right. There we go. Sorry. So the proposed revenues, you'll see here comparing the fiscal 21 actuals to the adopted budget for the current year, and then now the fiscal 23 recommended budget. You'll see the total amount expected to be raised by taxes at $103 million, or 82.6% of the total revenues. State aid, as I said before, at $15.8 million. Other revenues, which again we'll discuss in the budget process, of $5 million. And then the appropriated use of general fund equity fund balance. The town has traditionally budgeted between $800,000 and, again, in fiscal 21, $2 million, but usually around $1 million, and that's the recommendation this year. More revenue details available in your budget book on page 99. And just a reminder for everyone, we'll often refer to these books. There's a vertical book and a horizontal book. As we're going through a lot of the budget presentations, we'll probably be focusing on the horizontal book, which is your budget detail, every line item of the general fund and the pool and WPCD budgets. But no less important, and frankly, with a lot more information, all of the performance measures, my transmittal, which is about 10 or 11 pages, but I think is worth reading, that kind of gives a full overview of the budget. And then a lot of different charts and financial analysis that we'll reference throughout the budget deliberation. That will always be in the vertical book for folks following along. All right, moving on. Again, this is just the same revenues in pie chart form, showing our property taxes make up over 82% of revenue. Again, that's no surprise. State pilot at 4.1%. Town departments are about 1.7% of our revenue. Grants to the town and grants to education, you see 1.3% and 7.9%. That's largely the ECS funding. And again, miscellaneous revenues as well, making up the following slices. Just comparing to the fiscal 18 budget, which is really 6 budgets ago, if you will, 5 years ago. It's largely the same proportions that we were seeing before. Not a huge surprise, although in recent years, especially prior to fiscal 18 and really in the last couple of years, we've seen state aid fall. But you'll see here with that pilot restoration last year, our state aid is actually up a little bit. It still makes up about 4% of our overall revenue picture. But again, as you can see down the percents there, it's largely consistent with where we were 6 years ago in terms of proportions of revenue. Hope you can see this one. It's a little small on my screen. But this is our fund balance and surplus projection. Just want to walk you through this briefly. And again, this is also in the budget document. But, again, as we discuss appropriating from fund balance, as we adopt the budget, you can see here where for the available fund balance as fiscal 22 started, which was July 1st of 2021, we had about $13.3 million. There was a planned appropriation into revenue for the fiscal 22 budget of $1.175 million, leaving an unassigned fund balance after that happens of $12.1 million. You can see in the middle there, that's what we're projecting for the current year. Obviously, fiscal 22 is still going on. But currently, based on what we know, Jim Jascott is projecting revenues to be favorable by $1.4 million. We'll talk a lot about that as we go through the budget, but there's a significant FEMA reimbursement that makes up a good portion of that money, but also favorability on the expenditure side for a projected surplus at year end of $2.2 million. That would bring our unassigned fund, our available fund balance up to $14.3 million. And then, as I showed on a prior slide, the recommended use of equity for the upcoming fiscal 23 budget of $1 million would put our unassigned fund balance at $13.3 million. Off to the right, you'll see there that's 11% of our fiscal 22 general fund expenditures as projected. And that's a healthy number. We've been trying to get that number. Our policy is to keep it above 9.25%. Rating agencies will tell you they want to see that even higher, frankly, into the 15 or even 17%. But the council has always been very judicious in trying to make that balance between not holding too much and overtaxing, but making sure you have enough in the reserves in the rainy day fund for things that come up. So you do see we calculate there just how far we are above our own policy at 9.25, and it is $2.1 million that we are above our 9.25% target floor, however you want to refer to it. Moving on, and again, happy to come back to any of these at the end if we have some questions. And again, this is really a high-level overview because we'll be talking about a lot of this in great detail in upcoming budget workshops. Shifting over to expenditures, again, no surprise, the Board of Education makes up the largest percentage of town expenditures at 64%, 64.5%. You'll see administration and finance, which includes employee benefits and everything else, at 11.8%. The Planning and Development Department and Public Safety at 6.8%. Public Works at 5.7% and on down. A little easier to see it here on the next slide, which is in table format. Again, same information, just showing what makes up the $125,693,000 budget. And then the next slide, this is where I'll probably spend a little bit of time, are the key budget drivers. So what I've done here, and just so everyone can kind of follow along, you'll see at the bottom there, the $3.575 million is the overall budget increase at 2.93%. What I've done is shown some of the major items that are moving in this budget and the corresponding percent, if you will, that makes up that 2.93%. So those percentages are cumulative all the way down to 2.93%. So you can kind of follow along what's moving the budget the most. At the very end, you'll see all other changes net, and it's about $14,000. That's not to say there's not other changes that aren't on this list. There are some that are positive. There's some that are negative that offset. There's some staffing changes, some small reorgs, some expansion of hours, things like that you'll see throughout the budget. Just because they're not on the list, of course, that's not indicative that they're not moving or that changing them doesn't have an effect on the budget, of course. Again, the major budget driver, the Board of Education budget, again, compared to the current budget as it is today for fiscal 22 as revised, is $2.6 million. That makes up 2.14% of that 2.93%. Put another way, if that was the only change in the budget, our budget would be going up 2.14%. Debt service represents an increase, again, not including that $1 million, which you'll see further below as a negative debt service reserve transfer from fiscal 22. The underlying debt service is increased by $594,000. That's worth about 0.5% of a budget increase. Those are the two items that are outside of the general government budget, the town hall budget, if you will. So the next items are all within the general government budget that I'm responsible for. The first item being contractual salaries, position changes, positions that are modified in this budget, including positions like the new town engineer position that we recently funded, things like that, and Social Security. Those all total up to $531,000 of personnel changes, if you will, and contractual budget increases. Contractual salary increases for union employees. That's $531,000 or about 0.44%. The next item is the public safety radio contract. Again, this may feel like a little bit of ancient history, but it's really not. In two separate appropriations, fiscal in both November of 16 and November of 17, the town and the taxpayers supported a much needed and really critical public safety radio project. That project totaled a little under $4.5 million. It was recently completed in the past year, and this really upgrades our entire system to be more reliable. All new radios themselves, handheld radios, in-car radios, in-school bus radios, ability to communicate reliably across all departments and improve public safety throughout the town. As part of that large project, which Motorola installed on all of the towers that the system uses in town, there is an annual maintenance contract that we've been discussing for the last few years that will come 1 year after the project goes live. And so fiscal 23 is the first year we have to plan for the annual maintenance contract. That totals $198,300. So it's a big ticket item. Again, we knew it was coming, and here it is now that the project is finally complete. And again, Chief Dreif will be discussing that a little more in his budget presentation. It is housed completely in the police department budget. It's worth noting. It supports very much the fire department, public works department, and the school department. So, but ultimately it's all coming from the same pot. So for now, for ease, we've put it all in the public safety division and specifically within the police department budget. Moving on to the next item, some pension and 457 401A expenses. Good news with pension this year. So when I say pension, the defined benefit pension, the legacy plan that have been closed due to asset performance as of July 1st of 2021, where the markets were, and again, smoothed over 5 years. Our performance has been, our plans have been doing very well in terms of investments. So there's really not a lot of increase. Some years we've come with $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 increases. And especially in recent years, as we were smoothing in mortality tables, as you remember, interest rate assumptions and all of that. So this year, the good news is there really aren't a lot of increases there with respect to pension. The police, I think the town plan actually went down. The police plan is up, I think, about maybe $60,000 or so. But the bigger change that makes up the $130,000, we do have all new hires coming on board going to the 457 and 401A. And as we've talked about many times, that comes with real dollars right now. These aren't the defined benefit pension. You were kind of setting aside money to be paid out 20 and 30 years later. With 401A dollars, you're putting money in as a percent of salary the day they start. So we are still kind of in that window where we're paying the legacy defined benefit plan costs, but we're also seeing increased deferred comp costs, defined contribution costs. So with that totals about $130,000, and we'll talk about that more with when we get to benefits. Medical insurance, again, on the town side, we've continued to have very good experience. I know we presented a couple of months ago where we were. In fact, I just got the report this last week, and both the town and the schools had a very good month, which was good to see. Things starting hopefully to turn. The last 2 months have been favorable for the schools, but this month even more so than January. When I say this month, February's numbers were favorable. So knock on wood, that continues, and maybe we'll have a little flexibility there. But the town medical insurance line is projected to increase $122,000, which is about 0.1%. Second dedicated ambulance, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but again, this has officially gone into effect just this last week. The second ambulance is here in town. Council just approved that last month. I was actually at Elam Park earlier this afternoon accepting their annual donation along with Chief Dreif and Chief Kasner. And as part of our remarks, we were commenting on the new ambulance and the great appreciation of the folks there. And they certainly understand the need at times for ambulance services, and particularly in the south part of town. So that, I think, is a great investment and an expansion of public safety. And I know the council was very, very supportive of that proposal. So that does come with an increase of $109,000. Again, not including any offsetting revenue that we discussed will be part of that contract going forward next year. Solid waste disposal costs, again, I know these are both items the council is very well aware of in recent discussions. The underlying solid waste disposal costs in the expenditure side of the budget are up $108,000 due to increased tip fee costs and a little bit of an increase from the contract with the hauler. But it is worth noting, as we discussed the other night, on the revenue side, we are planning over the next 4 years to make use of the reserve funds we had from the Wallingford project to help offset and smooth that increase over the next 4 years. Police body camera replacement. Again, I'll let Chief Dreif do a full presentation on this at his on his night to present. But the proposal here at this point, so the town was something of an early adopter, or a little on the forefront with the police body cameras. So while it may not feel like it's that long ago, they are getting older. They are out of warranty. A lot of the body worn cameras are getting older, and so the chief has a couple of options and proposals for what we can do to replace them. Also, the in-car cameras we've had for over 15 years. Obviously, some of those are updated and replaced as needed, but the chief would like to present some options that I've included in the budget, totaling about $100,000 for body camera replacements and updated cameras. So we'll be discussing that further. That comes to $100,000. And as I referenced before, gasoline and diesel price increases from all lines across all departments on the town side total $82,000. So just reflective of gas prices were already increasing before the current conflict in Ukraine, and now with everything going on, we have to watch that very closely as we go forward. Again, I referenced the negative you see there is what appears as a budget reduction because we do not have budgeted an additional $1 million into the debt service fund. And then again, I said all other changes come to about $15,000 of a reduction. So again, sorry for belaboring that slide a little bit, but those are some of the big items that we'll be discussing and just kind of a preview of things to come. Earlier, I discussed the grand list, and I just think this chart is informative that I created. This goes back to 1993. These are all non-revaluation year grand list growth changes. You'll see that just barely over 1998, 3.03% does represent the highest grand list growth that we've experienced in the last 30 years. And again, this 3-year stretch that we've had, the past 3 grand lists, again, combined, I think it's a 5.76% or so, or 5.86%, is also the highest since the late 90s. So 3 years in a row, I think Cheshire has been doing a really great job of growing our grand list. All right, so that brings us to the mill rate analysis. Again, this is using values from the most recent revaluation, the average residential property being valued on the list at $303,000 market, which is an assessed value of $212,604. We assume the average residential property plus 2 average valued vehicles at $13,200 of market value, or $9,250 assessed. And that brings you a total of taxable property at $231,104 of assessment. Taking that assessment times the current mill rate at 33.72 gives you average tax bill of $7,793. And as you see here, the proposed mill rate required to support this budget as presented is a 35.00 mil, or an increase of 1.28 mils. That would bring you a tax bill of $8,089 for a total average taxpayer impact for someone with a home and 2 cars of $296 for the year. Or as you see there, I guess, averaged out $25 per month. Moving on to debt service. Again, these, I won't spend a lot of time on these, but as a reminder, the town's done a great job of reducing our general fund debt service amount. Now, we've used a lot of offsetting revenues very strategically over the last 4 or 5 years, and even really 4 and 5 years before that. Our debt service used to represent over 10% of our operating budget, and it fell to a low of about 5.8% a couple of years ago. Currently, we're at about 6.5%. And obviously, with school modernization and other projects coming down, we understand that will be increasing. And again, council's working very diligently to mitigate the impact as best as we can. To that end, you'll see the kind of traditional debt service analysis. I've kind of consolidated it here a little bit. But again, just a reminder, kind of back to fiscal 18, you see in the upper left there, our underlying actual principal and interest payments that make up our debt service were about $10.1 million. But that budget, for instance, the fiscal 18 budget, we used about $2.5 million worth of a debt service reserve fund contribution, some energy rebate, and then some $250,000 from the CNR fund, and also a revision to the WPCD's rate, and also some of the fund balance that they had there as the sewer treatment plant was coming online. For offsetting revenues, if you kind of follow that all the way across, of $3.574 million. So the actual budgeted impact, what we had to budget in the general fund for debt service, even though the underlying debt service was $10.1 million, was about $6.59 million. Again, this has been part of the smoothing over the next few years. We knew a lot of those you can't rely on forever unless you're able to replace them. So this has been a very diligent and concerted effort on the part of the council to really feather in the debt service increase over the remaining years. At the current year, if you kind of fast forward to fiscal 23, we're decreasing our use of debt service reserve. Obviously, we're not using any energy rebate or tapping into the CNR fund. And then some of those existing WPCD rate revisions that were done back before fiscal 18 just remain in place because the rate stays what it is. And we're no longer using the Department of Corrections settlement. That's all been used up in the prior 4 years. So the offsetting revenues, if you will, or offsetting resources are about $1.5 million, meaning our revised debt that is in our budget is $7.4 million. Again, as I said before, an increase of $594,000. So again, you can see that in the chart that I've presented the last couple of years too. You can see the offsetting resources on the next page, decreasing our reliance on them, and again, very strategically trying to mitigate the impact of our debt service. Had anything else? All right, moving on. I will just kind of quickly touch on the community pool. The current budget for the community pool, again, it assumes full normal operations, which is really where it is now as we've come through the pandemic. Even through this last year, I have to say that I've been pleasantly surprised that the revenues have been doing pretty well for the pool. We're on target with their budget for revenues, which I think is a good thing because we plan for pretty much normal operations. There have been some challenges with Omicron and others along the way, but the pool is doing well from a fee revenue side of things. The overall budget is projected to increase by $49,000, $49,600. Again, as I said, we're projecting a little higher pool fee revenues even in the upcoming fiscal year, back to pre-pandemic levels. And the town subsidy contribution that you'll see in the general fund operating budget is flat. The WPCD budget, again, we'll be spending a lot more time on this year. Certainly, here. So the total of $4,228,000 is proposed. That's an increase of $78,612 or 1.89%. That includes a recommended, as we have in most recent years, $5 sewer fee increase. The proposed budget that you'll have before you does fund an additional operator 1 position, and it eliminates a vacant clerk typist position that's been vacant for over the past year. Obviously worth noting that the projected fiscal 22 use of reserves to fund ongoing remediation and deferred maintenance projects totals $307,216. But as you'll see when we go through the budget, the good news is with a healthy reserve balance in the WPCD, the reserves at year end are projected to remain healthy at $1.2 million or 30% of their annual operating expenditures. So again, we'll be spending more time on that as we get to the WPCD section of the budget in the coming weeks. And really that will wrap up the presentation for tonight. A reminder that all of our budget documents and this presentation will also be available on our website at cheshirecT.org. And going forward, just a reminder on the budget calendar, I won't go through all of these, but we have upcoming Tuesday night at 6 o'clock, March 15th. That will be a virtual meeting to review employee benefits, general services, admin and finance, town attorney, and public health. The following Tuesday, March 22nd at 6 p.m. here in council chambers is also the public hearing. So very worth noting that. And for the public, we hope they come out to give us their thoughts and comments on the budget. Also be reviewing some departments that night. Tuesday, March 29th at 6 p.m. will be a virtual meeting on Zoom for fire, police, the public safety departments. Going forward to the next slide, you'll see Thursday, March 31st at 6 p.m. Another Zoom meeting with Public Works, Park and Rec, and Community Pool. Tuesday, April 5th, council chambers will be the Board of Education budget night. And then Thursday, April 7th in council chambers is the proposed town council public information session. And then the following 2 weeks, following week for budget review as needed. The recommended proposed evening for town council budget adoption is Tuesday, April 26th, and that meeting would be at 7 o'clock p.m. And again, as I said before, additional meetings to come for the capital expenditure plan, and those will be announced as soon as that's finalized. And lastly, I just want to say thank you to our incredible budget team in the finance and town manager's office, Sharon Sherma, Gina DeFilio, Jim Jascott, who are over here, Hope Larson, Donna Ouellette, Noel Shepard, Arnett Talbot, Chris McCardle, and Bill Donlin and Lou Zula, who all pitch in to make this proposed budget documents happen. So, and thank you to all our department heads and of course the Cheshire Public Schools staff. With that, I will conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Sean. I guess we need to go home and absorb much of this. I don't think it's a night where we ask a ton of questions, but I don't want to say we close without any if there are some. So I'll be fair and open. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thankfully, Sean, it was the last slide, so I didn't have to, or the last one of your, the main part of the presentation, so I didn't have to go back and find it again. But it may be helpful as we get into the WPCD budget to get a sense of what their fund balance is. You know, you referred to it as the 1.5 million and 30% of operating. Just kind of historically where that's been, just so we can take a look at that.
Sure. So if you take the vertical book, the big book, as we refer, sorry, it's technically the small book as we refer to it. If you go to page 118 of, again, the portrait book.
Oh, okay. I was on the right one.
Sorry. Yeah.
Which one?
Yeah. If you go to page 118, I know it's the vertical book, but the page I'm putting you to is a horizontal page.
That's what.
Just to throw you in.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. If you go to page 118,
yep,
you can see the historic fund balance at the bottom there, going back to 2014. And so you'll see starting this year, or I guess at fiscal year ending 21, $1.5 million. And then that's the difference between that and the 1.25 is net of other changes, the effectively $250,000 to $300,000 worth of projected additional expenditures in the current year.
It's almost like you knew I was going to ask.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sean, I have a quick question on, you were talking about how the state would put a 0.29, Yeah, mill rate on vehicles. So the numbers that you gave were based on a 35 mill rate, correct? So that could drop it, if my calculations were right, about $111 for the average taxpayer. So that 296 could be a lot lower if the state comes through like they say they would.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important point to note that the intention, of course, is for taxpayer relief. It's just not taxpayer relief through the town, so to speak. Right? I mean, it is, but it's being implemented by the state. So
But that's a big number. I think,
taxpayers
for-
would stand to save a lot of money. It's, again, in a perfect world, if we're reimbursed dollar for dollar, then it's 100% savings to the taxpayer. You know, in a roundabout way, if we're not reimbursed dollar for dollar, as I was explaining, and again, we got that reimbursement number in the first governor's budget presentation, and I went over to Jim and we're matching up all our numbers, and we're like, why are we short, $250,000, $300,000? And it took a little digging to figure out, oh, they're using October 1, 2020 values, and that was the difference. So, but it's true that the average taxpayer stands to save additional money outside of the municipal tax bill.
So will we have those numbers before the end of this cycle, before we have to submit the budget, or?
Well, this is always the problem. So even though it's a short year for the state, the end of their session is the first week of May. So we have to adopt by the end of April. Usually by then, you have a really pretty good sense for what's going to come through. There are hearings on the governor's budget and on this proposal specifically. CCM and Cost and many towns are certainly reaching out to our delegation. I think I would encourage everybody to do so to make sure they understand that technically we aren't being held harmless. We're not being made whole to the tune, in Chester's case, of $297,000. I think if that's the intention, is to provide taxpayer relief, but not sort of force additional taxpayer impact in a roundabout way, because that's really what happens here. If we're shortchanged, then we're having to set a mill rate on all other property that compensates for that $300,000. So certainly, I think beating the drum and joining the chorus of towns that are saying, "Hold on, let's make sure we're actually being held harmless." We certainly support. We understand the regressive nature, and we understand the burden of the car tax, and certainly, all else being equal, would support the reduction. The devil's always in the details, and of course, the concern that all towns share, any of us that have done this, as you all have for many years, is the state goes ahead and funds that reimbursement 1 year, and then next year it's reduced, or oops, we can't fund it in year 3 anymore. And now you have a 29 mil cap on your vehicles, and the burden is effectively shifting to other property owners.
So I will remind all the residents of this town to reach out to your state legislators and make sure that we do get fully funded for this, because it's an important part of our budget, and it's a good amount of money that would be savings in their pocket too. So I appreciate that explanation. Thanks.
Anyone else? Sean, I know it's not completely budget-wise, but it does factor into a capital budget. The note we got this morning from Jeff Solon regarding an April 19th meeting joint between BOE and the town council regarding really final numbers, or very close to final numbers on the school's cost program. I'd like to just get that out to the council so they could, because I noted there was no response. Certainly I hadn't, but that's a date we're looking at, guys. That's a Tuesday night. That's in between all of our other stuff. It's normally kind of telegraphed in as a council night anyway. So I just wanted to put that out there, and you could probably just, have Noel send something out so everyone can confirm, but at least put it on your calendars, because I think it's a fairly significant meeting that we all want to be able to attend. April 19th. And then another piece of this, Peter, you had asked a question regarding the state's reimbursements. And we did have that meeting yesterday, and I did ask, and those rates, those reimbursement rates have already been published for the year. So they stand. There was no change. So apparently they do that in the beginning of a year cycle or something like that, so people know. So there's going to be no changes there, at least. However, inflation looms large. So that's all I can say, because that's all I really know. Jim?
Were those rates still 45 and 35, which is I think what they were
You
before?
know, I wasn't smart enough to ask that. They
Okay.
were,
Okay.
yeah, sorry about that. Mr. David?
Thank you. Just want to remind us all, thank you for the overview. I think it was great. We've got 51 days before the statutory deadline. We're going to have 6 workshops of various, no, none whatsoever. And that's less than we've had in 3 years because the governor extended it for considerable time. We're going to have at least 6 workshops with the various departments coming to us. We're going to have 2 public information sessions to hear more. But I also remind us that as a policy board, let's not necessarily get ourselves tied up in the weeds of things, although as a local governmental body, the closest level of government to the citizens, it is important that we get their input to be part of this. But, and Sean, another company, you did a great job highlighting some of the expenditures that are driving some of this. But there's also beyond that, there's some things, for instance, Public Works is under expending by about 5%, $400,000. That's significant. You're level funding them for next year. So I'm going to want to know why as well. Even though it is an expenditure driver, it saved money. So, we'll need to look at that when we get into Public Works as well. So there's other items that don't necessarily show on the surface that are questions. You did a great job. Only 2 new staff positions, 252, but we heard already from the departments that eliminated them. So that means there's others that are more increases. So we'll want to have, when we get to those departments, just some justification on those. I know you're prepared for that, but just want to say that, to expect that. And, but we've got some work ahead of us, but we've been collegial and all worked well together the 3 years that I've been doing this in my resurrected terms. So I think we will work well together again, and looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's going to happen. Just a question, though. I noted in the schedule you have 2 Zoom meetings scheduled.
Well, the ones that are not full council meetings with public information sessions are Zoom. So
Right.
I think 4 of them are Zoom and 2 are,
4?
well, the Board of Ed is also, so it's probably 3 and 3 or something. Yeah.
Board of Ed better not be Zoom.
No, it's not. No, that'd be too many, and it'd be nice. to
Okay,
have it.
is that just because it's easier for everybody, or?
It just seemed like if it was just a
Well, I know we've
presentation.
done it before. I just didn't know if we were just trying to resurrect and keep the Zoom people happy, or if it's going to really keep
It was
us
thought that
happy.
it would be easier and more convenient, and we
Okay.
are also going to try to limit them to 6 to 8 o'clock. Because I heard loud and clear 2 years ago not to go to 9 or 10 o'clock, but I would ask you, Mr. Mayor, not to put too many other items because they are special council meetings since we all are participating.
Well, I'll
not to
do my
add too many
best.
other
That's
items
usually a staff issue.
unless needed.
But I'll
Well,
try
they've
and-
heard.
I hope they can manage that a little better
They-
too.
They've heard. So,
But,
and-
I'm the permissive opponent,
Okay. Thank you.
But again, we have to do what we have to do, right?
Yep.
And we will. I guess I don't have anything else, so I guess we could call this quits. And I promise I will be on at 6 o'clock for the future meetings. I was home
Last one's 7
comfortable too, by the way. I
Very last
really
one.
was. I was really. I could have been here on time.
Yeah. Were you hedging between daylight savings this weekend and?
No, I just 6:30 was in my brain.
Yeah. All right.
So I guess I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Motion carries unanimously.